Welcome back to our channel. What if your everyday Washington quarter was worth more than a paycheck? In 1995, a quiet error created one of the most sought-after quarters in circulation. By 2003, an unusual strike made collectors do a double take. And in 2014, a subtle flaw turned a regular coin into a hidden jackpot. These aren't just old coins, they're treasure hiding in plain sight. Like what you hear? Hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Your next rare find could be jingling in your pocket. Let's start with 1995. In the heart of 1995, amid the humming of coin presses at the Philadelphia Mint, the Lincoln cent was being produced in volumes that would rival nearly any other year. Billions of 1-cent coins were churned out, their familiar copper-plated zinc composition stamped over and over again with the enduring image of Abraham Lincoln, his solemn profile facing right, the word Liberty beside him, and the date etched below. From the outside, there was nothing remarkable about these coins. They were destined for wallets, vending machines, and the bottoms of piggy banks, quietly slipping into everyday commerce like countless others before them. It wasn't a year marked by war or great upheaval. Yet, beneath the humdrum of a stable U.S. economy, something unusual had taken place, hidden in plain sight. Unknown to the mint workers at the time, a flaw had crept into the production process, subtle yet unmistakable. It wouldn't be discovered for months, years even. And when it was, it would spark a quiet storm among numismatists. The kind of storm that begins not with thunder, but with the silence of someone staring at a penny that somehow didn't look quite right. There was no grand announcement, no televised discovery. Just an experienced collector named Harold Winslow seated at his kitchen table one spring evening in 1998, flipping through rolls of pennies from a local bank. It was a ritual of his one born more of habit than hope. He'd sorted through tens of thousands of coins over the decades, his trained eyes honed by time and disappointment. But that night, his hands paused on a coin that seemed to glimmer slightly differently beneath the kitchen light. He turned it over, blinked, then squinted. Lincoln's profile was as expected. The date read 1995. But the word Liberty looked doubled. Not like a shadow or a flaw in the plating. It was clear, bold, almost as if it had been stamped twice. Harold's breath caught. His pulse quickened. He held the coin beneath a magnifier. The doubling wasn't random. It was deliberate, controlled, mechanical. This wasn't a die crack or postmint damage. This was something else entirely. For a moment, he didn't dare believe it. Then came the rush, a thrill every serious collector secretly chases. He rummaged through the rest of the rolls with renewed vigor, found two more coins bearing similar characteristics. Not identical, but clearly related. All bore that strange doubling on the obverse, most notably in the word Liberty and the date. Even the motto, "In God We Trust," seemed slightly affected, as though echoing itself. The next few days were a blur. Harold contacted fellow collectors. Some dismissed it as a machine error, not worth fussing over. But others saw what he saw: precision, pattern, purpose. Then whispers began to circulate in coin forums and conventions. It wasn't long before the error had a name. The 1995 double die obverse Lincoln cent. It wasn't the first of its kind. Collectors remembered the legendary 1955 double die penny, one of the most famous minting errors in U.S. history. But that coin had been bolder, the doubling more dramatic. What made the 1995 version so compelling was its subtlety. It required knowledge, patience, attention. It didn't leap out. It asked to be discovered. As news spread, so too did the excitement. The coin, initially passed off as ordinary, began climbing in interest. At first, it fetched only a few dollars over face value, then dozens. By the early 2000s, examples in mint state were selling for upwards of $50, and pristine specimens, those untouched by circulation, began reaching into the hundreds. Still, even among collectors, many were skeptical. Could a penny from a year as mundane as 1995 really harbor something so special? What fueled the allure was the uncertainty. Not every 1995 cent was struck with the double die. Far from it. The majority were utterly normal. The error had occurred only on a single obverse die, just one, and had somehow made its way into circulation. It was a rare glitch, one the mint had failed to catch, perhaps because the doubling wasn't as dramatic as past examples. But that very nuance gave it a mystique all its own. Over time, demand began to rise. Collectors, new and seasoned, started hoarding 1995 pennies in search of the anomaly. Dealers noted the spike in inquiries. Some speculators bought full bank boxes of pennies just for the chance of unearthing one. Slowly, but surely, the coin that had once gone unnoticed began to glitter in the numismatic world like a hidden gem. And yet, there was more to the story, something not even Harold had realized at the time. In 2004, a numismatist named Vanessa Loring was cataloging her collection when she noticed a detail that had been overlooked in most assessments. She examined not just the obverse, but also the coin's edge and metal finish under different lighting. What she found startled her. A particular batch of these double die coins, she noted, had a faint die clash and impression left when the dies themselves strike each other without a planchet in between. It left ghost-like traces of the reverse design faintly imprinted on the obverse die. Vanessa traced these markings, comparing them across known specimens. Her research suggested that a very small subset of the 1995 double die cents had been struck early in the die's life, when the clash was still fresh. That meant an even narrower segment of coins, with both the doubling and the die clash present, making them distinct. A variety within a variety. It wasn't just rare, it was staggeringly rare. Only a handful of these has since been authenticated, and their value, well, it changed everything. For years, the market for 1995 double die pennies had been climbing gradually, plateauing in the mid-2010s. Mint State 65 coins were fetching between $150 to $300, depending on appeal. But with Vanessa's discovery, interest reignited. These clash die specimens began appearing in high-end auctions. One sold for $1,600, another for $2,100. Prices didn't just increase, they spiked. As awareness grew, the coin's legacy deepened. No longer was it merely a double die. It was a coin with layers: mechanical error, mint oversight, die damage, historical oversight, and rediscovery. It exemplified everything that collectors love: mystery, precision, rarity, and revelation. And there was one more surprise left to uncover. In 2021, a coin grading agency received a submission from a private estate in rural Kansas. The coin had been stored in an airtight container for over 2 decades, untouched, ungraded. It was a 1995 cent. On initial glance, it bore all the usual signs of the double die error. But under higher magnification, the graders noticed something extraordinary. The doubling on this coin extended further than previously recorded. Not just Liberty or the date, but clear separation in Lincoln's eye socket, an unusually defined doubling on the upper tip of the 5. Experts pored over the coin, comparing it with known examples. It wasn't a new die. It was the same one die one, but this specimen had been struck at the exact moment the die was still sharp, fresh, unwarped. The strike was flawless. The luster, brilliant. It received a grade of MS68 RD, a level of perfection unheard of for this coin. The auction drew international attention. Collectors, dealers, even museums vied for it. Bidding opened modestly but climbed with fervor. $5,000. Then $9,000. Then $14,000. When the final gavel dropped, it had reached a staggering $24,800, a world record for a 1995 double die Lincoln cent. From the background noise of billions of mundane coins, one penny had emerged with a value far beyond its weight. Its error wasn't just a flaw, it was a window into the hidden mechanics of minting, the chaos of mass production, and the human eye is sharp enough to catch what machines had overlooked. There's no telling how many still rest in drawers, jars, or forgotten piles of change. That's part of the thrill. Somewhere, among the pennies passed without thought, one might carry the subtle doubling that changed everything. Or perhaps even rarer, one with the clash marks invisible to the untrained eye, waiting, still, to be recognized. The legacy of the 1995 1-cent coin isn't written in its copper sheen or the millions of its kind. It's in the silence before discovery, the breath held as the letters double into view, the race of the heart at realizing a forgotten penny might just be worth a fortune. In 2003, the U.S. Mint was operating with the smooth efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Lincoln cents, by then a century-old staple of American currency, rolled off the presses by the billions. The design remained unchanged: Abraham Lincoln's enduring profile on the obverse, the stately Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and the familiar copper-plated zinc composition still holding strong. To most, the 2003 penny was forgettable, just another coin tossed in a pocket, slipped into a vending machine, or buried beneath sofa cushions. Yet, within the unremarkable rhythm of production, something subtle and strange occurred. The kind of thing not meant to happen. Not in the modern age. Not in the 21st century, when minting technology was supposed to be too refined for such errors. And yet, deep within the mountain of 2003 pennies, a mistake had emerged, one so obscure that it would take years for collectors to truly understand what they were looking at. It started with a collector named Ian Rook. A quiet man with a passion for the forgotten corners of American coinage. Ian had spent most of his weekends digging through bank rolls, coin shows, and dusty jars at estate sales. He wasn't after fame or fortune. He just liked the thrill of the hunt. But in late 2005, something caught his eye. It was a 2003 Lincoln cent that felt off, not because of wear or toning, but because of what it didn't have. Under his loupe, Ian noticed the usual elements: Lincoln's bust, the inscriptions, the date. But the coin's surface felt shallow. The details weren't missing, but they weren't quite right either. The word Liberty seemed uneven. Not doubled, not worn, but distorted, as if the die had slipped, or hesitated, or even partially collapsed. And Lincoln's profile, usually crisp, looked softer, lacking the precision he'd come to expect from that year's issues. He examined the reverse. The Lincoln Memorial was there, but the pillars, typically well-defined, were muddled, almost melted into the background. A phantom version of the design, as though struck through a layer of gauze. At first, Ian dismissed it. Probably just a weak strike. But then he found another. And another. All from 2003. All showing similar characteristics. That was when curiosity became obsession. He reached out to numismatic forums. Responses were mixed. Some claimed it was dieware. Others speculated a filled die or grease strike-through. But then someone floated a different possibility. A asterisk misaligned die, one that had deteriorated or shifted during production. Or worse, a flawed die that had never been replaced. That kind of oversight wasn't supposed to happen in the 2000s. Yet these coins existed. It wasn't long before others began reporting their own findings. Not just weak strikes, but odd texture, uneven surfaces, blurry details. Some even noted faint doubling on Lincoln's chin and jawline, not the dramatic kind seen in 1955 or 1995, but a shadow, a hint, like a whisper in the metal. As the mystery grew, so did the excitement. Dealers began looking more closely at their 2003 stock. Coin shows featured quiet conversations between collectors hunched over display cases, eyes darting to the copper discs beneath glass. No one was calling it a major error yet. But the signs were there. The coins, still in circulation, began selling quietly on online forums. A few bucks here, $10 there. It wasn't about profit, not yet. It was about possibility. Was it a rare die deterioration? A worn collar die? Or something else entirely? Then came the breakthrough. In 2012, A researcher named Dahlia Chan published a detailed analysis of over 52,003 cents with the anomaly. Her conclusion stunned even experienced numismatists. The coins were the product of a defective die that had somehow remained in use far longer than standard protocol allowed. Instead of being replaced, the die had degraded to the point where it produced hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of soft, distorted strikes. And because the variation wasn't extreme, it had gone unnoticed by the mint. She cataloged them under a new label. 2003 Die Deterioration Error, Type 2. Unlike typical weak strikes, these coins showed a consistent pattern: uneven pressure, loss of fine detail, and an almost sandblasted surface texture in certain areas. Even more surprising, some of the coins showed signs of metal flow lines, a feature usually found in early 20th century coins, not modern ones. Dahlia's report sparked a wave of reevaluation. Collectors returned to their albums and boxes, rechecking their 2003 specimens. The market, quiet for nearly a decade, stirred again. By 2015, certified examples of the error were appearing in grading slabs. A few high-grade coins, preserved straight from mint sets or rolls, sold for as much as $75. But that was only the beginning. Word spread. Collectors who had once dismissed 2003 as a dull date now paid closer attention. The possibility that a simple penny so familiar and ordinary could contain such a minting mystery gave the coin new life. The value began to shift. In auctions, MS-64 and MS-65 specimens with clear signs of the error reached $100, then $150. It wasn't just scarcity that drove the price, it was the story. The idea that modern minting could still harbor such imperfections fascinated a new generation of collectors. But the twist didn't come until 2018, when a sealed roll of 2003 cents was found in a defunct coin dealer storage locker in New Jersey. The roll had never been opened, its paper wrapper still intact, dated and stamped by a private bank. Inside were 50 pennies, all seemingly normal, until one coin stood out. The texture was strange, almost frosted, but what truly caught the attention of the grading experts was a near-perfect doubling of the motto, "In God We Trust." This wasn't the soft strike or die deterioration that had defined the Type 2 error. This was something different. Cleaner. Sharper. Almost deliberate. The coin was authenticated by a leading grading service as a 2003 double die obverse discovery specimen, the first of its kind. No others had ever been confirmed. Collectors were stunned. The market, already simmering, erupted. The coin, after weeks of speculation, sold privately to a high-end collector for an astonishing $12,500. That sale rewrote the story of the 2003 cent. No longer just a coin with a quiet error, it now had layers: a known deterioration issue, a newly discovered double die, and the possibility that others might still be out there. It pushed collectors to search again, to re-examine what they thought they knew. Today, the 2003 1-cent penny with a known die deterioration error can sell for anywhere between $50 to $200 in mint state, depending on clarity and strike. But the double die specimen, if another one surfaces, could command 5 figures again, perhaps even more if found in pristine red condition. From the chaos of modern minting, one ordinary coin found a way to stand out. Not with drama or boldness, but with quiet imperfection. The kind that takes a careful eye, a patient hand, and a willingness to believe that even the most common things can hold the rarest surprises. The year was 2014. On the surface, there was nothing especially remarkable about that year's release of the Lincoln cent. The U.S. Mint continued to strike billions of copper-plated zinc coins, bearing the now familiar Union shield on the reverse and the enduring face of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. It was a year like many before it: routine, predictable, steady. And the penny, ever present in wallets and change jars, went largely unnoticed. But deep within this tide of sameness, something had quietly gone wrong. It didn't happen at once. It wasn't obvious like a clipped planchet or a dramatic off-center strike. No, the 2014 anomaly was far more elusive, more delicate, almost as though it had been hiding in plain sight. For a long time, no one noticed. Or if they did, they brushed it off as an anomaly too minor to matter. That is, until a woman named Lena Granger opened an uncirculated roll from her local bank in Nebraska. She wasn't a full-time collector, just someone with a fascination for tiny details. She'd picked up the habit from her grandfather, who told her the smallest mistakes often hid the biggest secrets. So, she rolled a coin beneath her loupe one afternoon and paused. There was something different about Lincoln's EYE.AT first. She assumed it was her imagination. But when she tilted the coin, she saw it again, what appeared to be a doubled outline around the eye, and a faint doubling along the bridge of the nose. The date looked bold. Almost too bold. Not thicker, exactly, but layered. Subtle ripples of design. She examined. Liberty. There it was again, doubling, not severe, but unmistakable. She didn't jump to conclusions. She compared it with other 2014 pennies. The differences were small but consistent. She posted her observations on a numismatic forum. Most dismissed it at first. Machine doubling, they said. Not a true double die. But a few eagle-eyed collectors saw something more. Within a few months, other reports came in. Not widespread, but enough to raise questions. A possible minor double die obverse on the 2014 penny. One that affected only a tiny portion of the mintage. It wasn't like the dramatic 1995 double die or the famous 1955 example, but it had a presence. A quiet strength. Lena's coin was sent for grading. It came back authenticated. 2014 1C double die obverse DDO001. It was the first confirmed example. That's when the conversation changed. The error was subtle, yes. But it was real. And it was consistent. Not caused by machine vibration, but by a genuine misalignment of the die impressions during manufacture. That small shift had left a trace, a whisper in the metal that now separated a handful of pennies from the rest. The numismatic community took notice. Dealers who had dismissed 2014 as a boring date began to recheck their inventory. Boxes of mint sets were pulled from storage, each penny carefully examined. Most were clean, but just a few held the same faint doubling around Lincoln's features. Collectors began trading them quietly. A few dollars here, $20 there, then $50. By 2018, graded specimens in MS65 red began selling for over $100. It wasn't just about the doubling, it was about the thrill of finding something overlooked. But the real twist came later that year, when a man named Philip Gerben found something even more bizarre. Philip had been scouring eBay for overlooked coins when he noticed a 2014 penny with a strange shadow near the lower edge of the shield on the reverse. He bought it for just under $2, assuming it was a photographic illusion. When it arrived, he saw it with his own eyes. The base of the Union shield appeared duplicated, not shifted, but stacked. The bottom lines looked doubled, layered, like a faint ghost of the shield had been stamped below the real one. The coin went through expert analysis. It was, incredibly, a double die reverse. A separate die error, completely different from the one discovered by Lena. A rare pairing obverse and reverse doubling in the same year's mintage. Both subtle, both unexpected, and both confirmed. Suddenly, 2014 was no longer just a footnote. The market responded. Coins with the DDO began selling at stronger premiums. MS66 red examples fetched upwards of $175. And Philip's coin, the rare DDR example, the only one graded above MS65, sold at public auction for $750. The excitement was tempered with patience. These errors weren't plentiful. Only a few dozen examples of the DDO001 were confirmed across the country. Even fewer of the DDR. But their existence rewrote the narrative. And no longer just another penny in the pile, The 2014 Lincoln Centennial held secrets that only a careful hand and a patient eye could uncover. And for those who found them, the value was far more than monetary. It was a reward for attention, for curiosity, and for refusing to overlook what others had missed. As of today, a confirmed 2014 double-die obverse penny in MS65 red condition can command between $150 and $250, depending on its clarity. Higher-grade examples, particularly those with full red surfaces and sharp strike details, can go for much more. And the few reverse error specimens, now tracked by serious collectors, remain rare trophies in the world of modern coin errors.